When she was like 20, she was like 7. When she was 100, she was like, right? Her whole life she was tzedekah, tzedekah, tzedekah. So we must say, if that's a true drasha, that we must say the same must be true of Yishmael. I don't think of Yishmael that way, but the same must be true because it says the same thing. Ma'ashana, 100 years, and 30 years, and 7 years. Instead of just saying he was 130 years, 137 years, 100 years, and 30 years, and 70 years. And then, if that doesn't convince you that Yishmael was a tzaddik, vayikva vayamos, he was nikva vayamos. Rashi says, what does that mean? You just die. Lo nemra gevia ela b'tzadikim, says Rashi. That when it says vayikva, that language of vayikva, like it says by Yaakov Avinu, it means we're talking about a tzaddik. So clear, it's a tzaddik. Vayeyosef el amav, and he was gathered onto his people, which the Gemara learns means he was a ben olam haba. That's what it means. Gathered onto his people means that you're going to olam haba. Vayishkenu b'chavila ad shur asher al pnei Mitzrayim, and his children took over the land, which is al pnei Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim would be south, and everything north in the Middle East basically is included in this pasuk. Boacha, Ashura, all the way up to Ashur, which is today Iraq, Mesopotamia and Iraq. These are all the sons of Yishmael, al pnei kol echav nafal. Over all his brothers he dwelt, meaning not everybody who lived in these places, in these geographical areas, were the sons of Yishmael, but Yishmael was in charge. So what we see here is that Yishmael became very, very big, became very, very important, 12 tribes. They became very, very important politically, and Yishmael himself, the Torah tells us, was a tzaddik. He was a tzaddik. He's not our tzaddik, but he's a tzaddik. If you move up the page a little bit, and I'm going backwards specifically, it speaks about, in Pasuk Zayin, Perek Chafei, Pasuk Zayin, it talks a very similar language about Yishmael's father, Avraham. Ve'ela yemei shnei chaye Avraham asher choy. Beautiful language, by the way. These are the years of Avraham asher choy. Doesn't say that by Yishmael, does it? No. Just says Ela told us Yishmael. I'm sorry, Ela shnei chaye Yishmael ma'ashana goes right into the years. Asher choy means that he used every year of his life was living. You know, you could be alive and you could be living. It's two different things. So here's the difference between Avraham and Yishmael. Yishmael was a tzaddik, but he wasn't like his father Avraham. Avraham lived all of his years. Like, Ohev Yamim Liros Tov. So Ela Yemei Shnei Chai Avraham Asher Choy. We find, by the way, while I'm here, just at the end of the gracious, Paro asked Yaakov, "How old are you?" So he said, "How old am I? I'm old and I'm tired." But this is what I lived. He made a distinction there. Ma'ashana, 100 years and 70 years and 5 years, again a tzaddik, vayigva, again a tzaddik, vayamos Avraham v'seva tova, zaken v'safeya v'yosef alamo. So we have a very similar language of two generations, the generation of Avraham and the generation of Yishmael. And then the Torah tells us, vayikbru, so Yitzchak v'Yishmael banov, that Yitzchak and Yishmael, these are the two sons of Avraham, came together at the funeral of Avraham. And they came to bury him, and they took him, Yishmael. Now here's what we need to have in our minds for the rest of tonight's shir. That Yishmael and Yitzchak are walking together to bury, they're holding the coffin of Avraham Avinu and taking him into the Ma'aras HaMachpelah to bury him. It was Yishmael and Yitzchak. Just to keep the visual clear at that moment of that funeral, so Yishmael was 89 years old, and Yitzchak was 76 years old. So, then the Torah tells us, they took him to Ma'aras HaMachpelah. Vayihi, in Pasuk Yud Aleph, Vayihi acharei mos Avraham. And it was after that Avraham died, Vayivorech Elokim es Yitzchak beno, that Hashem blessed his son Yitzchak, not his son, but Avraham's son Yitzchak. Vayeshev Yitzchak im be'er lachai roi. And this is a very, very important pasuk for us. Vayivorech Elokim es Yitzchak beno, part 1 of a very important pasuk, that Hashem blessed Yitzchak. Vayeshev Yitzchak im be'er lachai roi, and Yitzchak went to live in be'er lachai roi, which is seemingly an unimportant piece of information. Let me talk about the first part of the pasuk here, which is astounding to me. It's actually mind-boggling to me. Hashem blessed Yitzchak. You know that almost the whole story, the whole gracious, the stories of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef, was so much about the blessings. Was it not? Thank you so much. Who's Yitzchak going to bless? Is he going to bless Yaakov? Is he going to bless Esau? What a story we have about who's the Bechor. He takes the Bechor from him. I'm the Bechor, you're the Bechor, you stole my brachas. The whole story about who's going to get this blessing from Yitzchak. Very important to get a blessing from Yitzchak, apparently. And then if you go on, Yaakov got the blessing. Ba'achicha b'mirma, he had to steal the blessing. Yitzchak said, he stole the blessing from you. He has the blessing. Now he's giving the blessing over to Yosef, it seems. But what's clear in the Torah is that when Yaakov came to give over the bracha of his fathers, it was so particular. First, Ephraim and Manasseh, he crossed his hands. He did it wrong. Yosef picked up his hands the other way. No, Yadati b'ni Yadati, I know exactly what I'm doing. This bracha was everything. The bracha that was passed down through the generations. And then the whole Vayechi ends with Yaakov blessing his children one after the other. It's all about giving over the blessing. So why can we not find anywhere in the Chumash that Avraham blessed his children? Avraham had a child Yitzchak, he had a child Yishmael. Bless both, bless one, bless none. And not only it doesn't happen to come up, but Meforish didn't bless them. Vayivarech Elokim es Yitzchak beno, Vayihi acharei mos Avraham. And it was only after the death of Avraham that Hashem blessed Yitzchak. So it comes out that the blessing that Yitzchak was giving over, assuming he's taking the ball and he's running with it, the blessing that he was giving over to his son Yaakov, and to Yaakov to his 12, to the Shvatim and to Ephraim and Manasseh, this bracha did not start with Avraham Avinu. Isn't this a pella? Isn't this amazing? It didn't start with Avraham Avinu. It started with Hashem after Avraham Avinu died. Why didn't Avraham bless? Don't we all pray to bless our children before we leave this world? Avraham Avinu, that should have been the source. He's the source of everything. He's the source of all blessing. And somewhere tonight we need to answer that question, because it's a very important question, I believe. By the way, I must say that I looked behind you all this while. I couldn't find anybody ask this question. It's such a clear, obvious question. It's all missing. It's screaming out missing from the Chumash. That why didn't Avraham bless his children? You say, all right, maybe he wasn't so like mushy, but the whole gracious is about blessing children. Everything is all about the blessing. The blessing. Who's getting the blessing? Who's getting the blessing? What's the blessing? Yeah.
It's interesting. Also, Yishmael, we said got a bracha also when Haggar ran away. Like here, that he got a bracha when Avraham was alive. So
from a Malach.
From a Malach.
But not from Avraham.
Right.
Okay. That is interesting. Yeah, let's go back to try to understand the story, and I think that we have here something which is so basic to what we need to understand and believe. If you go to Parak Tes Zayin, Pasuk Aleph, Parashas Lech Lecha. Page 70. And here, I'm just going to go over quickly because we spent a lot of time on it last week. Tes Zayin Aleph. Page 70 in there. The Sarai Eshes Avram, again, this is the story of Yishmael. We just talked about the end of Yishmael. We talked about the bracha that happened after Avraham died. There's a Yishmael and a Yitzchak after Avraham died. And remember at the end there, after Avraham died, just keep this in mind also, Yitzchak went to live in Be'er Lachai Roi, a place down south in the Negev. They say the Be'er Lachai Roi is in Beersheba. And there's a place today called Be'er Lachai Roi, which you can go look at, and that's Beersheba. The Targum Onkelos says it is Beersheba. Maybe it's a suburb of Beersheba, but it's Beersheba. It's the same Be'er. There was Beersheba, right? It's Beersheba, so there was a Be'er of Be'er Lachai Roi. Here the Torah tells us the beginning. And we know the story we went to last week, and you know it yourself. Sarai Eshes Avram lo yoldalo, that Sarah, the wife of Avraham, did not give birth. Remember we learned last week that they were married at this point for 67 years. They were married for 67 years. And no children. So Sarah said to Avraham, the clock is ticking. Even though she wasn't so old because she got married when she was 3. But she's working on this for 67 years. Sarai Eshes Avram lo yoldalo, v'lo shivcha mitzris u'shma Haggar, and there was Haggar in the house. Haggar came to the household when Avraham Avinu went to Mitzrayim. And with Sarah, he had to run away from Eretz Yisrael, and there was a Rav Baritz, and he went to Avimelech and all of that, and he came back with Haggar. Haggar followed him home. Paro's daughter. Vatomer Sarai el Avram, hine no atzarani Hashem iledas. You see, Hashem is not giving me children. Bo na el shivchasi. Live with my mate. Ulai ibonem imena, so that I can build from her. Ibonem imena. Vayishma Avram l'kol Sarai, and Avram said, okay, I'll do it. Fatika Sarai Eshes Avram es Haggar hamitzris shivchasa, and Sarai, who was the wife of Avraham, took Haggar the Egyptian, shivchasa her maidservant. Miketz eser shanim l'sheves Avram beretz tam v'titin osa Avram yesha lo leisha. It's very interesting. By the language here is very important. Was she a maidservant as she was married to Avraham, or was she a second wife? How do you understand this until now? Was she some sort of a concubine, or was she a wife? So here the Torah is very, very clear about this. Vatiten osa Avram isha lo leisha. She gave it to Avram, her husband. Isha, that's what the Mapike. Lo Isha, it should be to him for a wife. Vayavo el Haggar, Vatar. Right? She became pregnant right away. Annoying to Sarah. Vatera ki harasa vatekel virta v'einheha, and Sarah became less in the eyes of Haggar. You see that you don't have the schus. Now we're talking about very great people here, Sarah, Haggar. And the question here was, who's going to have a child from Avraham? Seems like there was already a question, who's going to have a child from Avraham? And Sarah's understood 70 years, she's waiting, it's going to be from me? No. In a very short time, she's having a child from Haggar. So what's that? Why? Why did Hashem do that? Vatomer Sarai el Avram, and Sarai said to Avram, Chamasi alecha, You messed me up. What did he do? Hamasi alecha. Anochi nasati shivchosi b'chekecha. Here I give you my shivcha, v'terek yerusha. She becomes pregnant. Well, what was the kavanah? What did she want? Ekel beineha, and I become small in her eyes. Yishmael Hashem ben you beinecha. We have to argue. We have to talk about this. Why? So Rashi explains that she said to Avraham, obviously, all this time you were davening that you should have a child, but you weren't davening that we should have a child. And if you weren't davening that we should have a child, that it comes out that Hashem listened to your tefillah and you had a child like you davened. So now I'm seeing retroactively that you didn't daven correctly. You didn't daven for me. Why didn't he daven for her? Why didn't he daven for her? That's something that we need to understand. Why wouldn't he daven for her? It's his wife, Sarah. He loves her. Why wouldn't he want to? He wants to have a child. Why didn't he daven? Unless you say Sarah was just making this up, but I don't think if she was just making it up, it would be here in the Chumash. Apparently, he in fact davened for himself. I'm going to have a child, and he didn't have necessarily Sarah in mind. Interesting.
Maybe he just assumed where else am I going to get this? It's of course going to be Sarah.
Maybe he did, but Sarah says it's not the way to daven. Because there's other possibilities, right? I was talking the other day someplace, and I was saying that Kabbalah, the world of neshamas begins with one big neshama, and this world, Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, Asiya, the world of Bria breaks apart into many, many different neshamas, male and female, and Jew and Gentile, and Kohen and Levi and Yisrael, and a million pieces. The neshamas, and here we are, we're all different neshamas, pieces of a neshama, and the trick of this world is to put the whole thing back together. So if you marry the right person, so everybody likes to say, two halves of a neshama coming together. So I was explaining this to a group. Somebody, so this man said, apparently there are 6 parts to my neshama. 6 parts. I'm married, I'm divorced, I'm married, I'm divorced, I'm married, I'm divorced. So he said, I must have a lot of pieces to my neshama, because they were all, mashmauti. Okay.
It's a big neshama.
Big neshama, yeah. Complicated neshama, we would say. Okay, now here's the thing. Let's get to work here. Sarah throws Haggar out of the house. Vayomer Avraham el Sarah, hine shivchasech b'yadech, take your shivcha back. Asila, even though it was his wife, according to the earlier pasuk, take your shivcha back. So it was his wife and her shivcha, right? Hine shivchasech b'yadech, asila hatov beinayich, do whatever you want. So he's not being particularly supportive. He's being supportive, in fact, of his wife, Sarah. But now Sarah. And Sarah started to be very mean to her. She tortured her. But tivrach miponem, until she finally ran away. Oh, strange story. She runs away, says the Torah, v'yimsa malach Hashem al ein hamayim b'midbar, and the malach finds her at the ein mayim, at a waterway, a water spring, which is in the Negev, in the south of Eretz Yisrael. Al ha'ayin b'derech shur, we know exactly where that is. Vayomar, the Malach says, Haggar shivcha Sarah emi zavos v'amet telecha. Where are you coming from? Where are you going? What are you doing? You're running around the desert. Vatomer mipnei Sarai gebirti. She says to the Malach, Sarah, Sarai gebirti. Amnoichi bayrachas. That's where I'm running away from. Vayomer la Malach Hashem, shuvi el gebirti. Go back. Go back there. V'isani tachas yotel. And be tortured more. Vayomer la Malach Hashem, and this is the bracha you were referring to. The Malach Hashem said to her, Harbe arbe zarech. You will have, like as if to say, you will have great reward for the abuse that you're receiving from Sarah. Harbe arbe zarech, although you suffer mirov, there will be an uncountable amount of children. Where do we have this lashon? We know this lashon. We're always quoting Avraham and Yitzchak. Hashem said to Avraham, you're going to have children, well, you suffer mirov. This was the only child right now. So we had Avraham, Yishmael, but Yishmael wasn't even born. But the child in process here was Haggar's child, and the bracha was to Haggar that you will, from you will come a child, asher lo yisafer miro. And this starts to make the wheels turn to understand the confusion, perhaps, if we can use this word with Avraham Avinu, the confusion of the bracha that Hashem tells him later that you will have children like the stars and like the sand, asher lo yisafer miro, which can't be counted. Okay, same bracha. Same bracha. Vayomer lo malach Hashem hina hara v'yilad teben probably means you'll become pregnant and you'll have a child. V'karasa shmo Yishmael, and you'll call him Yishmael. Ki shama Hashem el onyech, and he will be a para Adam, as I explained last week. He'll be a para Adam. He'll be a wild person. Yodoi bakol v'yad kol boy v'al pnei kol echad yishkoi. Says the Torah further, Vatikra Shem Hashem Adover Elah, she called out unto Hashem who spoke to her. So Haggar, to keep the story clear in our minds, Haggar is tortured by Sarah. She runs away from Sarah. She has a nevuah from a malach. The malach tells her, gives her a bracha, and it wasn't a malach giving her a bracha. She immediately says, this is from Hashem. Vatikra Shem Hashem Adover Elah. She called out to the name to Hashem who spoke to her, so she understood this is coming from Hashem. Ata el ra'i, you saw me. Here I am, one woman, a tortured woman, walking around in the desert, no place to go. And the malach found me. Hagam halom ra'isi achrei ra'i, al kain kara, and therefore she calls it laber, this ber l'chai ra'i. Now, finally, Batelet Haggar Avram Bain, she came back, she had a child. The son was Yishmael. Avram called him Yishmael, and at that time Avram was Shmonim Shana v'Sheish Shanim v'Ledas Haggar is Yishmael Avram. Okay, so let's keep our minds very clear here as to the situation. The story was that Yishmael is finally, she comes back from being tortured, she comes back from Ber L'chai Ro'i. Now keep this in mind, we now know two things about Ber L'chai Ro'i. One of them is that it was named such by Haggar because of the prophecy, Ber L'chai Ro'i, Hashem sees me. It was named because of this prophecy. That's one thing we know about Ber L'chai Ro'i. And the other thing we know about Ber L'chai Ro'i is when Avraham Avinu died, immediately after the funeral, it says, Vayoshav Yitzchak, that Yitzchak, after burying his father, where did he go? Go home. Where did he go after a funeral? Go home. Gemara Samach Pela. Avraham Avinu lived in Hebron. So go to Hebron. That's where you are. Go home. It's a tshuva. Do what you're supposed to do. Where does he go? Right after the funeral, he goes down to the Negev, and he goes and he lives in Be'er L'chai Ro'i, the place that Haggar had a nevuah. And this has to tell us that something very deep is going on over here. Then, if we turn the page a little bit, Perek Yud Zayin, Pasuk Yud Zayin. Pasuk Tezvav. Vayomer Elokim el Avraham, page 74 in the Art Scroll. Vayomer Elokim el Avraham, Hashem said to Avraham. Now remember, this is the chronology clear. Right now we have a situation in the Avraham Avinu's house. Let's just keep track of Avraham Avinu's house. Right now we have Avraham Avinu, and he's back together with Haggar. They have Yishmael running around, and there's Sarah. So this is the tent of Avraham. Sarah was already bar mitzvah, the Torah tells us. Avraham Avinu did a bris milah. We know that in the next parsha Vayera, the malah was beyond Ashlishi from his milah. So he already did a bris milah. He did a bris milah on Yishmael, and it was he did bris on everybody around him. Vayomer Elokim el Avram, Sarai Yishtachah. He said, now let's get back to your wife, Sarah. Lo tikra shma Sarai ki Sarai shma. The big mazel change. We're going to change her name now from Sarai to Sarah. Ubayrachti Yosef v'gam nasati mimenu lecha bein. And now you're going to have another child, Hashem says to Avraham, from Sarah. Ubayrachtiha. And he will be blessed. Ubayrachtiha. I will bless her. Now, the correct response to this prophecy, Avraham Avinu, should have been the natural response, the normal response, our response, given the whole situation. Our response should have been, Baruch Hashem. Finally, I'm going to have a child with Sarah. I was promised a child before already. I was promised it's going to be like the stars of... Finally, I'm going to have a child with Sarah. Sarah is going to be happy. I'm going to be happy, and most important, we're going to have a nation. So he hears this prophecy, and the Torah tells us, Vayipal Avraham upanav. Avraham fell on his face. So far, so good. That's what you're supposed to do when you get an overwhelming prophecy. But Yitzchak, and he starts to laugh. Vayomer b'libo, and he says in his heart, Halaven mei shana yivoled, I'm 100 years old. Kilu, do I really need this? V'im Sarah, habas tishim shana, Taylor. My wife is 90 years old, and now you're giving us a child. Where's the thank you? He's laughing. Vayomer Avraham, and this is the most startling pasuk in the whole story here. Vayomer Avraham el Elikim lu Yishmael yichyel lefanecha, which really should be translated as, isn't Yishmael good enough? I have a son. You've already blessed Haggar that his children are going to be lo yisachar merov. There's going to be a million children. Like they're going to be like the stars and everything. I have a child. He's a good boy. I'll finish. I did it. That's all I wanted was a child to carry on my progeny. So what's now Yitzchak? Sarah? So she's 100 years old, the old lady. How are you going to start? It just doesn't work. Avraham says it doesn't work for me. Lu Yishmael Yichel Lefanecha. I was looking in the commentary of Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch. He says as well, I'll just read this to you. First, Avraham laughed. Then, however, came a painful thought. It's like when you hear your wife is pregnant. Yeah. First, Avraham laughed. Then, however, came a painful thought. The child that had already been born was apparently unfit for this calling. Avraham Avinu realized now, and only now, that the Nevuah is telling him that there's something wrong with my son, Yishmael. And that Yishmael is not it. He's not fit for this calling. Not only that, it was necessary to change the laws of nature. That's what he meant. I'm 100. I said, you're going to change the laws of nature not to give Yishmael this right? To change the whole world? To make a miracle? What do we need a miracle for? To change the laws of nature in order to realize the promised future? So Avraham says, Lu Yishmael yichya lefanecha. Let Yishmael live. Let him be the one. We don't need Yitzchak. Avraham Avinu said we have to accept this. Avraham Avinu said we don't need Yitzchak. So you know what happens? You know what happens if this would have come true? You get the Quran.
Yeah.
It starts with Avraham, it moves to Yishmael, and let it be that way. Is that what Avraham Avinu wanted? Is that what he wanted? The United Arab Republic? This is what he's asking for over here. Lu Yishmael Yichlef enough Yishmael. Yotze, yeah.
And also, he was Sarah rebuked him for not praying for her. So now it's like he's doing even the opposite and saying, "What do we need?"
Praying against her.
He totally wasn't he wasn't happy for her at all. She had nothing.
I thought you were going to say it even more. that yes, he didn't pray for her.
Like this is even more.
This is better. We did good. We did good. I don't want to hurt Sarah. She's giving me her Haggar. We have a child. This will work. In other words, Avraham Avinu said, "This will work. This is the key." It was not almost. He was putting Sarah. He was marginalizing Sarah in the story. Sarai in the story of the progeny of Avraham Avinu, which becomes the most important person in the world history.
But
right now.
This was after she rebuked him, right?
Yes.
So that's what's so...
You mean he didn't accept it?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
No,
He doesn't have to listen.
And also, is there an indication as to why it took so long between Yishmael and?
I don't know.
There's no indication
I don't
why
know.
it's 13.
But we know this, and I'm going to say this out loud because I really want to get to the news thing that I want to say. We know that once Yitzchak was born, so Sarah had a different. Yitzchak was born, and Sarah had a different attitude now towards Haggar because apparently she herself wasn't sure that she was going to be the mother of the Jewish people, as we call them. But once she saw she had Yitzchak, so now she took Haggar and Yishmael, and she said, "I'm going to throw them both out of the house. They both need to be out of here because this is the most startling words here." I keep saying everything's the most startling words, but the whole thing is very startling. She says to after she had a baby, she says, "Lo yirash." Let's see the. Lo yirash ben ha'ama hazois im b'ni im Yitzchak. No way, she says, that the son of this maid is going to share the yerusha with my son Yitzchak. It's a strong statement. What are we talking about? Money? What are we talking about? We know that later on the Torah says that Avraham nasan es kol asher loy. He took everything that he had, he gave it to Yitzchak. Ulubnei apalashim nasan matanos. He gave matanos away. He gave it. This is not about money. Lo yirash ben ha'ama hazos. Yirash in the Torah means Morasha. Morasha Kehilas Yaakov. Talking about Eretz Yisrael. No way that Yishmael is going to be a partner in Eretz Yisrael. There is no two-state solution here that's going to happen. There's no way that there's going to be. This is what Sarah is saying. Lo yirash b'ni im lo yirash ben ha'ama im b'ni im Yitzchak. Paragraph Aleph. Let's just take a look at it inside just to make sure we got it right. Pasuk. Paragraph Aleph all the way in Vayera. Page 96. Paragraph Aleph. Pasuk Yud. Vatomer la Avraham. She said to. Well, let's start a little bit earlier. Vatera Sarah as Ben Haggar Mitzris Asher Yolda la Avraham Mitzachek. There they are in the house. Sarah's got her baby Yitzchak. Here's Yishmael in the house. She sees him mitzachek. Rashi says he was getting into trouble. Vatomer la'Avraham. She saw bad in Yishmael. Vatomer la'Avraham. Goresh ha'ama azois ve'espena. Get rid of this Amma and her son. Ki lo yirash ben ha'ama azois im b'niim Yitzchak. Vayera hadavar ma'od b'nei Avraham alodas b'no. Avraham Avinu was very upset about this, and Hashem said to him, "Don't be upset. Just do it. Get rid of them." So, so that's pretty much where we ended last week. The meaning that we have here a screaming argument, if you will, between Avraham and Sarah, which is repeating itself over and over again, as to whether Yishmael is the man or not. This wasn't just the emotional thing. I'm sure it was that also of, what are you taking my son? Send him away. He's my son. Send him away into the desert. It was Avraham understood, and we see it over and over again, that Yishmael was the son that Hashem gave him. And Yishmael was the future of everything that Avraham Avinu had to teach. Yitzchak. Okay, Yitzchak. I love Yitzchak. But it doesn't have to, what's wrong with Yishmael? Why are we sending away? And Hashem takes, this is the hardest part of the story, Hashem takes Sarah's side. And he says, everything Sarah tells you, send her away, Ki Yitzchak Yikare L'Chazera. Why? Shema B'Kolo, why? Ki Yitzchak Yikare L'Chazera, because in Yitzchak will be your offspring, meaning it's not he was thinking Yishmael's going to die now. So Yitzchak will be your offspring, not Yishmael. So the big question here is, should Yishmael be his offspring? Should Yitzchak be his offspring? Avraham Avinu thought it should be Yishmael. Sarah thought it should be Yitzchak. Hashem said, listen to your wife. Shema b'kolah, listen to your wife. It's hard for you, but do it anyway. And Kibi Yitzchak, because she's right, that it's going to come from Yitzchak.
I think this just goes to show that when you invest in something, you don't want to let it go so easily. You spend so much time.
Avraham Avinu's right.
Right.
How old was Yishmael at this time when they threw him out of the house? We said last week.
37.
No.
No, that was,
Not that bad.
that was the Exeter.
21.
21?
I wrote down here. Let's get to the next part. So this is where I want to go. I'm going to talk fast. Next big story is at the end of, well, not really the next big story, but the story at the end of Vayera is the story that we all know, the story of the Akedah. The story of the Akedah, chapter 22, Parachav Beis. I just want to do a couple of psukim here, so we can look at this differently than we've ever looked at it before. Vayhi achar advarim ha'ila. And it was after so many things had happened. What had happened? Yishmael was thrown out into the desert. He lived someplace in the desert. He was alive, he was dead. It was a miracle that he was alive. Again, saved by a malach. Saved by a malach. We'll get back to that in a minute if we can. But here, Vayhi achar advarim ha'ila, after that, after Yitzchak was born, life had gone on. Velikim nisas Avraham, and Hashem decides to test Avraham. Vayomer and he says to him, Avraham, Vayomer hinei. I'm right here. Vayomer. Now here's something we all know, but I want to read it a new way. Vayomer kachno es bincha es yechidcha asher ahavta es Yitzchak. Take your child, your son, your only son, the one that you love, Yitzchak. A lot of things there. Chazal point out, Rashi says, a lot of things. So it goes like this. The Gemara understands it like this. Hashem said to Avraham, Kach es bincha, take your son. Okay, which son? I have two sons. Shnei banim yeshli. I have Yitzchak, I have Yishmael. They're both. So first of all, Yishmael came home, apparently. I have Yitzchak, I have Yishmael. No, Asher es yechidcha. Take your only son, Yechidcha. How can I have an only son if I have two sons? So Shneim Yuchadim Li. What Hashem meant was, Ki Yitzchak Yikare L'Chazera. The one I told you is your son. But Avraham Avinu is saying, I have two sons. Shnei banim yeshli. He's not giving up on Yishmael at all. Asher ahavta. Take the one you love. Shnei banim ani ohev, the Gemara says. It's all in Rashi. That's Yitzchak. Hashem lost his argument. He says, okay, take Yitzchak. It means that Avraham Avinu, in his mind, was ready to do an Akedas Yishmael. Whatever you're telling me about Yitzchak would have been just as true with Yishmael. And maybe even better from Avraham Avinu's point of view. Kachas bincha, I have two sons. Yechidcha, they're both miyuchad. Sherahavta, I love them both. That's Yitzchak. Take Yitzchak. He takes Yitzchak, what does he go do? V'lech l'chal ha'aretz ha'moriyah. What does it say? Vayashkiv Avraham Baboker. Avraham Avinu gets up early in the morning to do this mitzvah. Vayachvosh es chamoro, vayikach es shnei na'arav ito. And he takes 2 na'arim with him. Youths. That's Yitzchak Beno. And of course he takes Yitzchak. Who are the 2 na'arim that he takes with him? Rashi tells us Yishmael and Eliezer. Yishmael was 51 at this moment. Yishmael was 51. He was 1 nar, Eliezer was much older. So why are they called Na'arim? The same way you see at the end of the Torah that Yoshua nar lo yomish mitoich ha'oil. Nar means somebody who's dedicated, somebody who you trust, somebody who's a nar in my house. It means not a child. A child is one way of being a nar. But Yoshua nar lo yomish mitoich ha'oil. Yoshua, he took over the leadership of Klal Yisrael. He was an old man. He was also called a nar. So Shnei Na'ara, but it's very important because it means he took 2 faithful people, 2 people he trusted, Eliezer and Yishmael, and he takes them to do the Akedah with Yitzchak. Now, I just want to point this out here, that what the dynamics of what's going on here is very political, because we know that Eliezer, when he went to look for a shidduch for Yitzchak afterwards, he says, well, maybe you'll marry my daughter. Maybe Yitzchak will marry my daughter. He said, I don't think so. You're a Kanani. It doesn't work a Kanani. But Eliezer was a candidate, if you will, for carrying on. What did he want? What did he want to marry? Why did he want his daughter to marry Yitzchak? Because he thought maybe from us it'll come out like this. Yitzchak, Eliezer, it'll be that way. So Eliezer represented a certain derech at that moment that Klal Yisrael could have gone. It didn't go that way. It went to Rivka, which is important. Yishmael is another way that Klal Yisrael could have gone. Another progeny of Avraham Avinu. So we have Yitzchak here. Yitzchak's in the middle. Avraham Avinu is with Yitzchak. You have Yishmael on his right and Eliezer on his left. And Avraham Avinu saying, okay, what's going to happen now? Hashem's telling me to kill Yitzchak. He already told me to kill Yishmael. He already told me to kill Yishmael just a couple of pages ago. That did. Okay, Yishmael's here. Yishmael's here. Now he's telling me to kill Yitzchak. So what's going to happen if I kill Yitzchak? No problem, really, because I have Yishmael here. And I can get right back to Yishmael. And even if that doesn't work, I always have my old faithful Eliezer here. But ein Dafik, ein Or Dafik Baruch is not Eliezer. So Yishmael was there, coming to the Akedah as a backbencher. I just want you to understand that in Avraham Avinu's mind, he was 100% going to kill Yitzchak now. There's no question in his mind. He was going to kill Yitzchak. Again, Yitzchak is saved by a malach the same way that Yishmael was saved by a malach. So Avraham Avinu was still not clear who is going to be for the fulfillment of the bracha of Lo Yisafer Mirot. Yitzchak at this moment, let's get it clear again, was 37 years old, which is how I know that Yishmael was 51. Right? Man. Who's going to take over? If we go to the end of the Akedah, all the way to Pasuk Yud Tes, we all know what happens. He's ready to go there, but before we get to the end, this is the beginning. They're walking towards Har Moriah. This medrash just always chimes in my ear. That it says that Avraham Avinu saw an unknown kasher al har. He saw a certain cloud that was hanging on the mountain. I mentioned to you, I saw this. I was looking at Har Moriah just the other day. If you drive from Beit Shemesh to Efrat on the back road, so you go over Har Moriah. Exactly. It's called Har Moriah. It's called Derech Avos. Right? It's called Har Moriah, and I saw the mountain, which might have been Har Moriah, and there was literally a cloud hanging right over this mountain. I looked at my son funny. Well said. He stops, he sees the Anon Kasher, he sees this, the Anon was the Shekhinah, which was hovering over the mountain. And the Medrash says, famously, that he turns to Eliezer, and he says to Ma Taroeh, do you see what I see? And Eliezer said, I don't see anybody. And then he said to Yishmael, what do you see? I don't see anything. And he said to Yitzchak, he says, what do you see? What do you mean? I see the Anon Kasher Allah. I see the Shekhinah. And it was at this moment that it started to click, but how confusing is this? Here he's 100% going to kill Yitzchak. Yishmael's on his side. Yishmael doesn't see the Shekhinah. Yitzchak sees the Shekhinah, but Yitzchak he's supposed to kill. So, what is my progeny? Who's coming from me? What's going on? If it's Yishmael, why doesn't he see it? He goes up, the Malach saves him. Interesting, please fast forward. Vayikra Malach Hashem, let's say, Pasuk Tezvav. Let's do Pasuk Yudala because it's so interesting. Vayikra Avraham, after Yitzchak was saved by the Malach. Remember, who was saved in the previous chapter by the Malach? Yishmael. And what was the name of the place? Ber Lachai Roi, the place that Hashem sees. Vayikra Avraham Shema Makamahu, what does he call the place of the Akedah? Hashem Yireh. Hashem sees. Asher Yeyomer Hayom Bahar Hashem Yireh, echoing the words of Haggar. A Malach saved my son Yitzchak. This is the second time this happens to me. It started to become a pattern. A Malach saves. The name of the place is Hashem sees. This one became Yerushalayim somehow. Vayikra Malach Hashem al Avraham Shenis min Hashemayim. The Malach comes to Avraham again. Vayomer bi nishbati ne'um Hashem. I must point out to you, this is just so amazing how in the story of Yishmael, when Hashem said, listen to your wife Sarah, there was like a whole Akedah going on there. It's not for tonight because we don't have the time. But if you can compare Pasuk to Pasuk, Vayashkim Avram Baboker, it says over there, Vayashkim Avram Baboker, it says over here, Avraham got up early in the morning. It was an Akedah for him to send Yitzchak away, to send Yishmael away, it was an Akedah. He sends him away. He gets up in the morning to send him away. This was a huge sacrifice for him. He saved Yishmael, saved the last moment by a malach. Over here, Yitzchak is saved by a malach. After he's saved, what does the malach say to Yishmael? The malach says to Haggar and to Yishmael, you will become a great nation. I will bless you. What does he say over here? Exactly the same thing. Same thing. It's a repeat, I'm telling you. It's a repeat of the story. That was Akedas Yishmael. This is Akedas Yitzchak. And Hashem tells him again that this Yitzchak will be all the blessings I gave you, the stars, the sand, everything, it's all going to. So this became a very clear prophecy to Avraham now that I guess it's Yitzchak. I guess Sarah was right. These Baruch Hu b'zaracha kol they will be a source of blessing. Now look at this passage you test, please. Vayoshav Avraham el Na'arav. Avraham went back to Na'arav, which were who? Yishmael Eliezer. Vayakumu, and they got up. They were sitting there. Vayelchu Yachtov el Beersheva, and they went to Beersheva. Vayeshev Avraham beBeersheva. What's wrong with this pasuk, ladies?
Why is it twice addition? Well,
first of all, Vayoshev Avraham el Na'arav. Where's Yitzchak? Where's Yitzchak?
Yeah.
For all they knew, they see Avraham coming down the mountain all by himself. Oh, the knife worked. He comes back himself. Yitzchak went the other way. Where did Yitzchak go? It's a mystery. Where in the world is Yitzchak? Vayelchu Yachtov, he goes with Yishmael and Eliezer to Beersheva. He didn't live in Beersheba, he lived in Hebron. But he go to Beersheba. Vayeshev Avraham beBeersheba, he moved to Beersheba. You have this picture? Avraham Avinu coming down one side of the mountain the same way he went, Yitzchak going presumably the other way. The Gemara wants to know where went Yitzchak. One opinion is that he went to Gan Eden for 3 years. It was exactly to heal from the trauma. He was healing from the trauma. Another one was the Targum Yonas and Nuzil, which you don't have in your Chumash probably, tells us that he went to learn. The Medrash tells us, where did he go? You know where he went? He went to Be'er Lachai Roi. Because that's where he lived, in Be'er Lachai Roi. That's where he hung out. The Lashon of the Ramban, Be'er Lachai Roi, went there often to daven and to hang out. The Lashon of the Ramban. He's always in Be'er Lachai Roi. At this point, we all know the story. Vayiyu Chaye Sarah, you turn the page. Sarah was Me'ah Shana, Esrim Shana, Sheva Shana. Sarah died when she heard about the Akedah. Why did she die when she heard about the Akedah?
She took the line.
Oh, there it went. Yitzchak is gone. My whole plan. Not just I lost my son. The whole thing. The whole thing. Now it means it's going to go to Yishmael and not go to Yitzchak. That's what the whole thing means. So she died. What happens when she dies? The Torah tells us, by the way, just before it tells us that she died, it says that that you should know that at this moment Hashem gave him another prophecy and told him that right now, as this Akedah is happening, your brother Nachor just had a granddaughter, Rivka. So the Kala was just born. The Kala was born. Look what happened at the Akedah. Sarah died. Rivka is born. If you look at the a couple of psukim in, okay, he buries Sarah. Let me just try. Let's go, please, to Chav Daled. Chav Daled. Pasuk Samach Beis, and then I'll stop touring these psukim and say something. There's a whole story that we're skipping here because we did it a few weeks ago, that Eliezer and Avraham, Avraham waits 3 years for Rivka to become of age for something, at least, like it's possible to get married, I guess 3 years old. You can get married while you're still in a baby crib, you know, diaper. So she's trained. You got to get married, right? So he sends Eliezer to find Rivka. Eliezer finds Rivka. Everybody knows that Eliezer finds Rivka. Rivka follows Eliezer out. Vayomer lo, take a look at Pasuk Samach. As he's leaving, Vayibaruch hu es Rivka. They blessed Rivka as she was leaving. Vayomer lo, and they all said to her, Achoseinu at hayi la'alfei revava. This is Basul. Lavan said this. You are our sister. You will be the greatest of them all, Rivka. Everything's going to come from you. This is what we say under the chuppah until today. Tonight I heard it. Vayirash zarech shar soinav. They gave her a bracha that your children, Rivka, this 3-year-old, will inherit the land. Shar soinav needs to be explained. Now this is what I want to really focus on for a couple minutes. Vatakam Rivka v'narisel v'terkavna ala gemalim. Rivka and her servants are riding on their camels. They're following the Ish. Who's the Ish? Eliezer. He takes Rivka and they're going. Where are they going? To Hebron, right? The Yitzchak, who do they stumble upon? Nothing less than the Chassan himself. By Yitzchak, where is he? Yitzchak ba mi boy be'er lachai roi. Unbelievable. Where's Yitzchak? In be'er lachai roi, where Yishmael was saved, where Yishmael was predicted. That's where Yitzchak is hanging out. And what's he doing there? V'hu yoshev be'eretz hanegev. Yitzchak at that time is living in be'er lachai roi, in the Negev. Vayetze Yitzchak, and Yitzchak was just going out then lasuach basada, to walk in the fields and to daven mincha. We know we're davening mincha. That's where we learn mincha from. Lifnos erev, From here we learned that you're supposed to daven with next Arab. Vayisa Einav, and he picks up his eyes. Vayar v'hinei gemalim boim, which is right that easy, right? He's davening in the field. Here comes the kala. Vayisa Einav picks up his eyes. Vayar, and he sees v'hinei gemalim boim. There's a caravan of camels coming. Vatitzka Rivka say now Vateres Yitzchak. When Rivka saw Yitzchak, he looked so holy. Vatipo me'al hagamel. She was in shock from seeing this, and she fell off the camel. Vatomer el ha'eved, and she said to the Eved, Mi yoish halozeh ohelech basodeh. Vayomer ha'eved hu adoni vatikach hatzoif vatitkas. This is the guy. Says to him, this is the guy. Now, I just want to point out here what goes on. It's over here, by the way. The Ramban says, I just wrote the lashon down. Yitzchak haya tamid b'makom hazeh, ki hu haya makom kadosh u'makom tefillah. Says the Ramban. There's a makom, like we go to the Kaisel, the makom kadosh and makom tefillah, where be'er l'chai roi. Let's go to the daven. I mean, Yitzchak went. Vayetze Yitzchak whole mincha took place in be'er l'chai roi. The Ramban. If we look now, it gets Vayosef Avraham vayikach isha u'shma keturah. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. Vayivieha Yitzchak, very important pasuk, Samach Zayin. Vayivieha Yitzchak ahoala Sarah ima. Yitzchak takes Rivka, marries her, and brings her into the tent of Sarah. Vayikach es Rivka vatilo laisha vayehaveh vayinachem Yitzchak achrei imo. So, who's living in the tent of Sarah? I would presume who's living in the tent of Sarah would be Avraham. So Avraham, I guess, moves out for the young couple. And Yitzchak and Rivka come and move into the tent of Sarah. Rashi tells us so beautifully that when Sarah lived there, there was always a Shechina over it, and there was a fire burning all the time, and it was like a whole Beis HaMikdash going on over there. And a whole Beis HaMikdash going on. But when Sarah died, it all went out. When Rivka came back, the lights went on. A tent became a home, became a Beis HaMikdash, became a home for the Shekhinah. But Avraham Avinu is not here. What happens to Avraham Avinu? At this moment, you understand, Yitzchak got married. They find Yitzchak in Ber L'chai Roi. He's out there by Ber L'chai Roi. By Yosef, Avraham Avinu decides to get married again. By Yikach Isha Shma Keturah. And he marries a woman called Keturah. What does Rashi say? Yikach Isha Shma Keturah. Who's Keturah? Haggar. Now, it means that Yitzchak brought, Rashi says, Yitzchak brought Haggar home. He said to Haggar, look, Sarah's dead. You can come home now. You're a wife of Avraham. He married her. Yosef Avraham Yikachisha Shma Keturah. No im Maaseh Keturah, as Rashi says. She was such a beautiful person, Haggar, that it was like she was Keturah. It was like a korban. She was. She brings Haggar back into the house. Haggar marries Avraham Avinu. They have together. Where's that beautiful list?
I thought he had enough kids.
Zimran, Yakshan, Midan, Midyan, Ishbak, Shua. Right. Exciting new life. 31 years they're married. 31 years they're married. Had a lot of kids. And this was like a whole second life for Avraham Avinu.
4 kids.
Right, 100. So listen to this. So listen to this. With this I will end. It comes to Sarah. He says, "What are you giving me a son for?" It comes to Haggar. Midjan and Yishbak and Shavak and Babak. We have a bunch of little Arabs running around. What's this? What's going on over here? So I just look. There's. So let me just sum it up like this. Let me just say this. the issue is, as you already understand, I know I quoted a lot of psukim, but it's good to learn Chumash a little bit. Look inside. The issue here is as follows. Avraham Avinu's mission in this world, as he saw it, was, I'm going to convert the world to believing in Hashem. Let's get back to a monotheistic world. Idolatry, paganism has gone crazy. It's been the Tower of Babel. My father was a nut. He's going to bring the world back. It was a doable thing. He had a huge amount of charisma. As a nefesh asher asa b'charn, he had a huge amount of knowledge. He was a huge tzaddik. People, wherever he went, people were attracted to him. He was on, it's clear to me, that Avraham Avinu's mission in this world was Hashem echad u'shmo echad. That's what he saw. For that, everything, well, Sarah had a different idea. Sarah's idea was, you don't have to go be makar of the whole world. We need to start a family, and that family has to be your descendant. That family has to do the tikun of the world. Who's going to bring Mashiach? Who's going to fix up the chet of Adam HaRishon that he messed up? Who's going to bring the world to perfection? It's not going to be by you running around and getting everybody, filling up stadiums and talking about Hashem. It's about Tzimtzum. It's about Eretz Yisrael. It's about Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. I don't know if Avraham, he accepted this because Hashem told him, Kol asher tomer l'chasar shma b'kolah. But in his own mind, Lu Yishmael, he says, there's two nations, only two nations that have the Shem Hashem in them. B'nai Yisrael and Yishmael. Those are the only two that have. Not Midian, not Moab, not Mitzrayim. It's just Yishmael and Yisrael. The difference is that Yishmael will cause the whole world to know that there's a Hashem. They'll have that global, macro ability to change the whole world. Yodai ba'kol, b'yad kol bo, he'll be everywhere, he'll influence politics, everything will be good. And Yitzchak is, from him comes out Yisrael. We have Ashras Hashchina, Sarah El. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be Shora on them. This was a machlokas between Avraham and Sarah won. And Yitzchak became the choice, but he never let, for himself, I just want to point this out, for himself, Odmat Yiskoluni, I have the greatest cover for Avraham, I don't mean to, but for himself, he was a universalist. It's clear to me that Avraham Avinu, Sarah, we have Yitzchak go, do your thing with Rivka, and he went and married Haggar and had a whole bunch of other children. He sent them to he sent them all over the world, Rashi says. All over the world he sent these B'nai Apilakshim. He was like Shluchim, you know. They're all over the world to teach the world about Hashem. This Dazakenu told them Kabbalah, gave them Shem Hashem. I want the Hindus, I want the Buddhists, I want everybody. That's what happened. He sent away these everything came from Avraham Avinu. Everything. You know, there's a research of a professor a professor in Princeton who wrote a research paper how the Buddha was an exiled Tana, Tanoim of the Mishnah. He proves it was time of the Mishnah, and he decided to teach the whole world about spirituality. Okay, so from Buddhists became Judists, it's such a so this was Avraham Avinu, and Sarah had her feet on the ground, and Sarah, as a wife has, says, no, look, change the world, we have to make a Klal Yisrael. So one was making a Klal Yisrael, one wasn't. The bracha did not start with Avraham Avinu. It wasn't that Avraham Avinu blessed his children, and blessed his children. Hashem blessed Yitzchak, acharei mos Avraham. And we learned about this, that they're all getting back, Lavan and Basuel, everybody wants to get back to the Avraham Avinu way. No, we're going to be particular. Let me tell you one last thing, please. That just one last piece before we leave Yishmael. There's so much to say about Yishmael. So interesting. But you go way ahead in the Torah, the end of Bereshis. Yosef is arguing with his brothers. Yosef is talking. He's having visions of grandeur. The whole solar system is changing from the sun, the moon, the world. Very, very universal. He wasn't talking about Klal Yisrael. So they decided that let's get rid of Yosef. Right? Simple. Let's get rid of Yosef. We don't like his dreams. He's a Balach Halomos. Let's get rid of Yosef. What do they decide to do with Yosef?
To kill him.
No.
Throw him in the pit.
Bo nimkarnu lahayishmaelin. Portion of the pasuk. Let's sell him to the Yishmaelim. That's where he belongs, Yosef. He's a universalist. He's not a Jew. And indeed, what happened? Hashem thought different. They said, let's sell him to the Yishmaelim. So the Torah says right away, a caravan of Midianites came by, and they bought him, and one went to the other, and they ended up in Egypt. Kaf Gazar Hashem. And he was, in fact, a universalist. He was who Moshe b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. He became a superpower. This was really getting into the guts of the world as we know it. So it was right there. What we have, while they were selling, the Torah tells us, while they were selling Yosef down the river to the Yishmaelim, at the same time is the story of Yehuda and Tamar. Right? Yehuda and Tamar. The story of a story with a big question mark on it, but the story of the birth of the Mashiach. From Yehuda comes David, from Yehuda comes Rus, from Rus comes David. No. Boaz, rather. Yehuda, Boaz, David, Mashiach. Why are these two things together, asks Rashi. Was it the selling of Yosef, Yehuda, and Tamar? It was at the same time. Because while Yosef was planting this universal seed, Yehuda and Tamar were planting a seed of Mashiach, which is the final tikun of Bnei Yisrael. So what do we have? Says the Gemara, this is the way it goes. This is where we'll end. Mashiach Ben Yosef, Mashiach Ben Dovid. There's two Mashiachs. There's the Avraham Avinu Mashiach. There's the Mashiach, which is the universalist, which is going to get the whole world to understand that there's that Hashem Echad Shmo Echad. And then there's Mashiach Ben Dovid, who's going to bring the Shekhinah and build the Beit HaMikdash and build Eretz Yisrael and build Yerushalayim and focus everything into the place of the center of the world, which is Yerushalayim. So this was the Avraham and the Sarah and the Yishmael and the Yisrael, and how the whole thing fits together, and even till today, right? I mean, it's even till today. Who is the Sarah said no, Vayirash ben ha'ama hazois him b'ni him Yitzchak. There's no way that Yishmael is going to inherit this land. Avraham Avinu, not so sure. He's not so sure. So the Ramban says, if Klal Yisrael is doing their thing, Sarah will be right. If Klal Yisrael is messing up a little bit, Yishmael then has a bit of a yerusha in this land. So it's all about the Yishmael and the Yishmael and the Yitzchak, these two brothers, the ones that bury Avraham together. Okay.
Thank you.